You can't become too committed to X hole because you just have to be patient in some ways and find it and sort of absorb it. The great thing about Kingsley is that there's such great diversity within the landscape that the more man tries to fix things, you create other problems. If you can just work the land and like leave all the little stuff in there, because those little imperfections that Mother Nature makes, those are really hard for us to do because we're always trying to organize stuff. Humans are trying to fix it. You know, I can do better, and a lot of times we can't. So by leaving things alone and saying, hey, that creates a random bounce or a cuppy lie or, you know, a convex lie and the ball's below my feet or whatever the situation is, by leaving those things in place, you're creating something that's more unique and special. So I first got a call from Fred Muller about Kingsley, and he explained to me what the deal was, and that these two guys, one was a member at Crystal Downs, another guy was a guy I didn't know, a local guy here in Traverse City, and they wanted to start this club. And Fred kind of introduced Ed and me, and Fred was involved, you know, being my mentor, you know, growing up working for him in the bag room at Crystal Downs. You know, he's just a legend, and he's like, hey, I want you to meet Ed. Come over to my house, we'll open up a bottle of wine, we'll talk about what they want to do. And, you know, basically Ed said, we want to build a great golf course and, you know, have a club that's just golf. They weren't interested in anything else. And they wanted it to be on a level that was comparable to the other cool experiences that they've played around the country, in the UK, etc. They were big fans of all the stuff in Ireland. So it initially started that way. And we had a conversation, and Ed had found this property where the golf course is. And he wasn't sure that this was it was a thicket. I mean, you couldn't even penetrate areas of it. It was more about trying to, can we find and build a great golf course here that we're gonna love and wanna play every day? And so that was, the initial thing was literally just having a conversation. So at the very beginning, we had this thicket. I mean, it was 15-foot whips. They were that big around and just like impenetrable. Like we're literally 5 feet apart. I couldn't see you. I mean, how do you explore that? So we had a really good topo map, and that's helpful. But it's also, there's a lot of stuff in the ground, even on topo maps, that you can't see. So the big landforms and that sort of stuff, you know, makes itself out. And then you get an area where maybe there's a little bit of a clearing, or it's a briar patch or something like that. So the sinkhole between holes 2, 4, and 6, that area was kind of all briars and kind of messy, and it was hard to like go through it because you just get ripped to shreds. But you could see across it, and you could get a sense of, wow, this is this massive hole. It's like 50 feet deep, and you don't want to run a hole through that. So how can we work things around it? And that's a challenging thing with trying to figure out and find the golf course. And that was sort of Ed's things like, hey, this would be really convenient. You know, we're 20 minutes from Traverse City, real close to the airport. And if we can do it here, that's great. But if this isn't great, you know, we want to find the right piece of property. For Kingsley, it took about 6 months to really find how everything was going to like fit together and all those puzzle pieces. So there's a bunch of routings. There's a routing around here somewhere. This hole here was one of the first holes that I actually saw, just like sort of sitting on the thing. But the crazy thing about that is that this basically goes across the third hole, second hole, to where the 6th tee is, the back tee for number 6 is. And then this is where 7 comes down here now. And this worked in a way that didn't allow us to use the South 40 in a very functional way. And so we got rid of one great hole, and all of a sudden we opened up 5 great holes. When you think about the property where Kingsley is, we've got this amazing, you know, molded terrain that came from the glaciers and all that. And we're at a high elevation compared to the surrounding land. So there's a big river valley to the north of us. And then when you get, another 8 or so miles, then you got Lake Michigan and Traverse City down there. So we're at an elevated thing sort of from the area around there. So the wind's always constant. And you feel that because you're exposed and you're up above everything. And then the land itself, it's like the best soil I've ever worked with. Because it's got enough structure that it'll hold moisture, but it drains completely freely. So don't have to worry about drainage really. It's just really, really good. So it's great for growing turf. And that led to us figuring out, okay, well, we've got really good soil. We got the climate, let's do fescue. And then the thing was, well, what if we don't like the way the fescue is or it's not coming out? Well, then you just overseed it with something else. But it's the best playing surface you can have. When you think about having fescue, that's links golf. When you go to Scotland, you're playing sand, the ball bounces, it's hard and it's firm, and that's what we can get at Kingsley. One of the great things about fescue is you literally can do anything with it, and you know that the ball is going to release. So you can reward players by giving them options or wider breadth. And sometimes that could be like, okay, it's really massive, but the fairway's crowned and it's going to shed balls, and they're going to get to places that aren't necessarily ideal, and only the great shot stays like in the premier location. The fourth hole, there's this narrow little thing at Kingsley, it's 10 yards wide or something, but then you've got 40 yards or 30 yards on either side that rolls away from it. The great thing about that is knowing that you have a surface that isn't necessarily just going to have the ball stick everywhere. You can use those movements to help or to hurt players. And sometimes it looks like you're hurting them, but you're giving them another opportunity to do something creative for the next shot. Or that's semi-blind and is a little bit uncomfortable, but even average golfers that are confident that they know where they're going, they can overcome that sort of stuff. That's a big charge for a player. You try and find a way to give them some sort of comfort, give them space, but then put intricacy in with that, and fescue gives you the opportunity to do that kind of stuff. Having that variety in the landscape makes it endlessly interesting. I describe the greens at Kingsley as very diverse. They're natural settings. So there's a lot of gathering ones, but then there's also ones that repel. The first hole, it gathers all the balls in there. Then you've got the 3 punch bowls, 4 double punch bowl there, front and back, 5 and 18. Those all can accept certain shots and things like that. And then you've got sort of greens that repel. So you've got 2 portions of 3, 8, 15. There's this rhythm to how they work, and some greens have a combination of all of that. 3 really accepts shots to sort of the front right, center little pocket, and then you got the big ridge and you got the plateau on the left, and those repel shots, or they help the shot move and get to the right side. So I played the course, hundreds of times, but Kingsley, I think of sequences of holes and how they work together more than say like an individual hole. Like when you think about TPC Sawgrass, everyone thinks of the 17th hole, right? I mean, that's the culmination of all the excitement of the tournament, and some guy's in the lead and he's dumped 2 in the water or whatever. But in Kingsley, I'm thinking about the rhythm of the golf course. When you play the first hole and you get out there and you get to the South 40, then you're trying to figure out, okay, this is the rhythm of how I have to go and what I have to do. If you get a rough start and you don't play 1 as well as you want to, I always feel like there's an opportunity at 3 and 4, even though you can put a big number up there. But it's always fun if you can hit that slot and hit your drive right where you want to, and then you have an opportunity to get it close or do something cool. To me, that sort of then starts to set the bar, because you feel like you're getting your rhythm. The big potential disaster to start your round with, is behind you, and you go and you see it again though, because you finish 4 and you stand at 5-tee, you're looking right at the green and you're remembering either the success or the debacle that you just had. I think about that more than I think about, say, individual holes. And the same thing happens on the back. You can get a pretty good thing going, and then you'll come to 13 and you can play it conservatively and you're gonna probably get a 4 out of it. You might get lucky and get a birdie, but if you get really aggressive and you start to like try and do something that you're just not really capable of that day, you know, all of a sudden you're like, oh, that was an easy bogey or double, like bam, because you just did something dumb, right? And then you have the opportunity with 14 and 15 as a pairing. You know, you need 9 shots. If you're playing really well, you know, it's 9 shots to get out of there. And 14 a lot of times is a birdie and 15 is a bogey. And really good golfers, that drives them nuts. They're like, well, that should be a 4 and this should be a 5 because it's too hard. No, that's not the point. The point is you're supposed to figure out how to work your way around there and do the best score that you possibly can in there. And you got to take advantage when you can. And sometimes you can't. So I'm always thinking about how that works versus this is a great hole. When we think about the natural landscape of Kingsley and how, you know, some of it might seem extreme to somebody or not extreme, that ends up being an advantage that you have to be able to figure out how does it work? How can we make something that has all this variety, can do all the things that we want it to do, but at the same time, how can we get it to be fair? Having that natural aspect of it, that's the randomness that you have at the old course, all the Great Links courses. How can you utilize that sort of stuff and then bring it into like a modern context? And that's some of the things that I think maybe the extreme comments, negative towards this shot or that shot or this hole, that's what sort of brings controversy or whatever, or it brings just discussion, right? Because there's a lot of people that will defend it. And there's a lot of great golf courses where it's one hole that's not as good as the other holes. And I think the expectation is, well, you have all these tools. Why can't you fix it? Maybe the point is you don't fix it, but you find a way that it works and it gives something that isn't just the standard response. Isn't, okay, well, we fixed this and that's safer and it's fair and this and that. It's like, golf inherently is not a fair game. It's this odd implement, the ball sits there, it doesn't move, nobody's tackling you, and it's still the hardest thing to do and to do well. And that's one of the great things about it.